Hello, in this brief presentation we're going to talk about spending optimization. Smart governments must always find effective and optimal solutions to citizens' challenges. But the real challenge is really the development of a solid optimization culture at all levels of local and national government responsibilities. We're going to see here an example, reopening schools. When do we need optimal decision modeling? Sure, anytime we are faced with complex problems where we have to allocate limited public or private resources at best. For example, when we do need to reopen schools but with a lower density to avoid infections. So we start to define the problem. How do we define the problem? We need to reduce classroom density in order to curb infection rates. The less students in a class, the lower the probability of cross-infection. Therefore, we need to calculate each school excess students and then move them to other state-owned locations, museums, city halls, and the like. But of course, not too far from schools. How? Well, first, determine excess students for each school, then classify all available state-owned facilities in the area, and then simulate an optimal relocation plan. What are the parameters? The students, schools, so how many students have each school, the current density, there will be schools with a higher density, others much larger with a lower density. There will be a target density which normally should be defined by the state, by the government. Then you have surfaces of public facilities, so you have museums, you have city halls, so you need to know the footage of all these facilities. Then you can determine the potential number of students for each facility. You also need to have a distance matrix defining how far each school is from all the other potential facilities. Now, this is the table for schools inventory. You see we have 12 schools. For each school we have a current number of students. Then we have a current density in terms of a square meter per students. So you see that the first school has 3 square meters per student. So it's very, very dense. The second has 5 square meters per student, is a bit bigger, and so on. So we have the footage of the schools, and then we have the target density. In this example, we have selected 6 square meters per student as a target density. We assume that the expert that gave consulting to the government has defined that 6 square meters per student is the right density to reduce infection as much as possible. So we can calculate the target students by dividing the school footage by the target density, and then by making the difference between the target students and the current students, we have the excess students, so the students that we need to move somewhere else. And then we'll have the final students, so the students that will remain in the schools after we moved away the excess students. Then we need to analyze in the area what are all the possible spaces owned by the state. So we will go to our city government and we'll ask to analyze all the data to see what are the available spaces between museums, city halls, and the like. For each space, we'll try to define the net usable surface footage. Then by dividing it for the target density, then for each space we'll have a maximum number of students that we could move from one school or multiple schools to this space. So in this example we have analyzed 20 spaces for a total of 1500 about square meters, and dividing by the target density, we have a total of about 2478 students, so 2,478 potential students that we could move from schools to these spaces. Then we have the distance matrix that defines the distance between each space and each school. Why do we need that? We need that because when we simulate, so we allocate schools to spaces, we don't want the parents to travel too long to reach the space where their children will be relocated. So we want to minimize distance, and that's why we need to take into account this distance matrix into our calculation. So we need to define the goals. What do we want to achieve? So relocation plans aimed at minimizing the number of public facilities. So even though we have 20 facilities, but we want to use as less as possible. In the same time, we want to maximize utilization. So we don't want to move students to a facility, to a museum, and only use 30% of museum footage. We would like to maximize the usage of footage so that we can use less facilities, but anytime we use a facility, we can use as much as possible of its footage. And at the same time, we want to minimize the distance between school and the selected facilities. So what do we need? We need an optimized decision model. Okay, so these are the results. So we see that the system has selected 14 facilities on a total of 20 available, and the average utilization for each facility is above 80%, so it's pretty high. So you can imagine that if we had tried to achieve that by using just pen and paper, it will take an awful lot of time to achieve this level of optimization, because we need to do so many simulations that will be almost impossible. And just for the sake of information, it took me about 1 hour to build this model, and to run it to achieve this level of optimization in more than 5 minutes. And I'm just using a laptop. So now if you have more time to spend, you can really do very complex models, very efficient, and then by using real servers with powerful servers, you can really do very interesting optimization in a fraction of minutes. Okay, so thank you very much. Now, what are the next steps? If you need more details about optimization training and consulting, please contact me at my public LinkedIn profile. Thank you.